Thank you very much for staying on the marketplace. Welcome back. Now, the planned IMF board meeting to review Ghana's performance under the fund program has been postponed. Sources say this is due to challenges in meeting some prior actions and implementing some structural reforms. Joy Business understands the meeting that should have taken place on April 9 is now likely to happen by the end of this month. There's more in this report.
On the event scheduled for Ghana's program, the country should have completed its fifth review last year, an indication that government had implemented those critical reforms for the staff and board approval and then move on to the sixth review this year. However, challenges in implementing these reforms meant that it had to be moved into this year for a combined fifth and sixth assessment. This was to ensure that Ghana was able to complete the about 4 reviews by December this year to aid program completion by April 2019. However, looking at the way things are going, if the IMF does not grant Ghana some waivers for it to pass the fifth review and even possibly the sixth review, then one can say that completing the program by April next year is under threat. Some may even ask why passing these reviews and even board approval is so critical. Well, most of the country's donor partners depend on the IMF report card before the continuing with disbursement of their funds for Ghana. And investors will be looking forward to this report before they bring in fresh capital into the economy.
Meanwhile, the IMF says it supports government's plan to issue 1.6 billion CD bond to settle the liabilities of UT and capital banks. The development raises a lot of questions about whether the taxpayer may now be funding the collapse of these two private banks. Now, moving on, the National Insurance Commission, NIC, has given the green light to a new reinsurance brokerage firm to provide expertise to insurance companies which seek to reinsure bigger risks. According to the Commissioner of Insurance, Justice Yaufori, the entry of Afro-Asian reinsurance brokerage firm into the market will minimize premium flight, which undermines insurance penetration in the country.
We realized that our market, the reinsurance market, was still virgin. There was a lot of business available. The economy is doing well. We have political stability, and there's discipline in our market. So the grounds are fertile. That's why they are here.
Okay. So you made mention of the fact that the reinsurance market is still left untapped. Exactly how did you mean?
Basically, what I meant was that we still send a lot of businesses outside the country, but we have fewer reinsurance companies on the market. We have 3 registered local reinsurance companies operating, and the figures that I mentioned, it tells you that there's a lot of money leaving the system. We don't have the technical expertise when it comes to reinsurance brokers. Currently, we have only 1 insurance broker until Afro-Asian came in. So it tells you that the market is not for only one entity. You need a lot of players on board to get proper services and maybe expose more technology. With our big businesses like oil and gas and marine insurance, where we don't have the expertise. Aviation, we do aviation insurance, but we don't have the expertise. So most of these businesses are underwritten from outside, and we just take their policy wording and then just sometimes front for them. But if we have a local entity that has the expertise, then it means that our local insurance companies can also take a bit of the risk, and that helps them to grow their capacity.
The Ministry of Local Government has launched the Tax Revenue for Economic Enhancement Project in Cape Coast. The revenue collection strategy, which places priority on improving revenue collection and enforcement processes, is expected to improve revenue generation at various district, municipal and metropolitan assemblies in the country. Speaking at the launch, head of the Local Government Services, Dr. Nana Ato-Ata, charged district assemblies to toughen their revenue collection bases to feed into government's Beyond Aid agenda. Richard Kojunyako has more in this report.
The Tax Revenue for Economic Enhancement Project, according to the Local Government Service, comes at the opportune time to help increase revenue generation at the MMDA level and reduce the pressures on the Consolidated Fund. Launching the TREE project in Cape Coast, head of the Office of the Local Government Service, Dr. Nana Ato-Ata, expressed his excitement that the TREE project has its focus on the property rate, the business operating permit, and the building permits. To him, these areas are a very important source of revenue for local administrations all over the world.
the over-reliance of the DACF by the MMDs, and the only source of revenue, as the only source of revenue, is a source of worry. From a governmental and fiscal rationalization perspective, the more revenue MMD can generate, the more autonomy they will have. Currently, internal generator funds are the only funds that MMDs have total control over. Because the Common Fund and most development partners' funds are targeted toward development projects and therefore cannot be used for recurrent expenditures, the ability for the MMDs to maintain new and existing infrastructure will become increasingly difficult if they are unable to generate adequate funds from their own activities. I'm happy to learn that the TREE project focuses on the property rate, the business operating permit, and the building permit. These are very, very important areas that we all need to focus on.
In a speech read on behalf of the Finance Minister, the Finance Ministry indicated Ghana, as a lower middle-income country, is transitioning away from the dependency on development assistance, and the government of Ghana will increasingly rely primarily on domestic resources to finance its development agenda. Ken Oforiatta explains the government is rather leveraging development assistance to build the internal revenue generation capacities of selected metropolitan, municipal and district assemblies to serve as a catalytic use of resources to ensure that economic development is sustainable and irreversible. Program Director, VNG International and the International Cooperation Agency of the Association of Netherlands, Peter Jonkin, urged the district assemblies to organize sustainable funding cycle in which they determine how these new revenues will be spent. This, according to him, will put them in the driving seat of their own future, will promote a sustainable increase in IGF and enable them to improve basic services to their citizens.
Because we are so proud to be part of the tax revenue for economic enhancement. I like the abbreviation, the acronym TREE, because it's simple. Which is an effort between the Dutch government and the government of Ghana to enhance the domestic resource mobilization. And if I mention that, mobilizing domestic resources, you know that we are talking about the heart and one of the biggest priorities of the Ghanaian government right now. Because if the government wants to continue spending and increase spending, responsible and priority spending, and reduce at the same time, of course, the government's dependence on loans, external loans, and donor support, then this mobilization is the key of the matter.
The program is supported by the Royal Kingdom of the Netherlands to Ghana's development agenda, particularly in the areas of good governance and domestic resource mobilization. Richard Kwejenya, Joy News, Cape Coast.
Now, stakeholders in the housing sector are calling on government to directly intervene in providing the necessary resources required for construction to drive down cost of building. According to the Executive Director of GHL Bank, Kojuado Kufuor, driving down the prices of homes is key to addressing the growing deficit concern.
Many components that go into the price of a house. If someone says, they're selling houses, I saw one in the graphic this morning, $69,000 at COM25. If you sit down with that developer to ask them why that house is $69,000, they'll tell you everything they had to go through to arrive at that cost. It's true that supply-demand dynamics, in other words, more supply could bring down that price. But the reality is they've had to acquire land at a certain price. They've had to engage construction companies to build. They've had to borrow money to finance that. They've gone through a whole process, and that feeds into the cost. So the role government can provide is certainty of land tenure. If government made land accessible to developers, that might increase, go ahead and decrease some of the components that go into pricing. If government assisted in the bureaucracy in perfecting title of land, that could help developers. If government made a line of construction funding available to developers, that would help. So tackling the ingredients is what I'm talking about. But it's not an easy conversation. And it's one that requires all stakeholders to sit around the table and and get a good understanding of why houses are priced the way they are.
Let's now do one of our top stories here and talking about UT and Capital Bank's assets of these two institutions. They're expected to be auctioned this week. This is to help raise the required funds to pay debtors of the institutions. Now, George Wiafi joins me in the studio to get some more updates on this particular development. George, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, Wiafi.
Now, first, could you give us a background? How did we get here first?
So, last year, you remember that the Bank of Ghana actually withdrew the licenses of these two institutions. That meant that the arrangements were structured in a way that GCB was asked to take the good assets of these two institutions, more of the selected purchase agreement. Now, we understood that, what about the rest of the assets that GCB thought it wasn't good enough? Something has to be done to these assets to actually pay off those people that credited or gave the funds to UT and then Capital. So this institution was appointed as PricewaterhouseCoopers as the institution that should go ahead, review these assets and see how they can dispose these assets, get some money, pay the GRA, pay other institutions, and even possibly look at the workers, those who are left to pay some severance package. So what we understand now is that they've done all the necessary screenings and all the rest. They've identified all the items, and possibly this week they will go to the public or do an auction. Because what they have done right now is that to actually give out these items to the potential people who want to get them, that, for instance, a car is going for X amount, those ensures whether you have the capacity to buy these items and how you're going to pay them. And so all these items have been identified and then given out to the public for that auction process to start and sell these assets.
So that doesn't mean to the ordinary person that GCB Bank has not got the right capacity to actually take up all these liabilities?
It depends on how the agreement was structured. So what we understand that GCB came in that they just want the good assets. What are those good assets? Maybe a loan that somebody was servicing. So maybe you took a loan from UT Bank and you're servicing it. Okay. And the rates can be reviewed, and GCB thought that those are good assets that we want because we can take those loans, reprice that loan, and get more from it. Maybe cars. GCB thinks that we don't need the cars of UT because we have enough cars, so dispose them of. Okay. Maybe they have a land in a prime area like airport. GCB might say that we want that land, give it to us. So assets that GCB thought that they might not need it was given to this institution to try and auction that those assets and use it to pay those other institutions that UT and Capital Bank might have owned some money and therefore go ahead and do these things. So these items will go under the hammer. The best bidder, if you are interested, you could approach your PricewaterhouseCoopers and grab one of those cars or grab those items and then maybe even the prime lands in the airport and own those properties.
So what exactly is going to happen?
So just like any normal auction process, they're going to do these auctions, and therefore who has the highest bidder? Is it you? Is it maybe Darrell? Is it maybe Shilatamaklo? You can bring in about maybe 10,000 Ghana cedis to get that car. She's asking maybe 5,000. It might go to you. So just like any normal auctioning process, this is what they are going to do.
And what is it going to happen to creditors and debtors?
So it means that if they realize all the amount, of course, or what they are targeting to get, the good thing about an auction process is that you are likely to get more because a lot more people are fighting for the limited assets, or you may end up not getting what you're looking forward to. But again, let's realize that government is also planning to issue a bond to pay some of the liabilities of these banks. So the good thing is that if they cannot raise all the amount, the bond issuance would even things out to clear all these debtors and creditors out there.
Now, the IMF has thrown its weight behind a government's decision to raise this bond. I mean, what's your take on that?
Well, the program is trying to put restrictions on government's expenditure and raise more revenue. So if under this program, government wants to embark on any activity that will result in raising more revenue, you need the approval of the IMF to do this. Government has been able to justify the essence of going ahead with this fundraising exercise, and therefore the fund believes that, okay, it might be a good initiative, go ahead and do all these things as long as these funds be directed towards these areas in terms of clearing these debts and ensuring that there isn't any spillover effect on other commercial banks in the country.
But obviously would, impact on, us, consumers like this.
Obviously, if government is doing a bond issuance, in the long term, you and I might have to pay for that. And then it brings back this whole argument again, whether the taxpayer was indeed going to fund the collapse of these banks.
Now, in the event of this particular situation happening again in the banking industry, is it going to be the same
I think
procedure?
that the Bank of Ghana might want to avoid some of these things. So what are the problems of X institution, X bank, which we understood previously that there were about 3 banks that were going through some problems. So if it's about improving corporate governance issues, if it's a liquidity problem, can the Bank of Ghana quickly get in and plug that loophole rather than waiting for the situation to get that bad? And the problem has always been, or has to do with what they call the contagion effect. What do you do to ensure that you contain that cancerous cell from spreading to other banks? So if the Bank of Ghana can move in quickly, if it's about leadership in these banks, if it's about corporate governance problems, let's deal with those institutions, or let's deal with those issues right now before they spread as any cancerous cells in one body.
Thank you very much, George,
Thank
for
you so
that
much.
explanation. And that was George Wiafe giving some explanation to the decision by the Bank of Ghana to raise, to auction some assets of Capital Bank and UT banks, as well as raise a bond on the international market. Now, let's turn our attention now to the petroleum sector. And the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers, COPEC Ghana, is accusing BOST of misinforming the public in a statement released last week, justifying a $2 discount in the sale of crude to oil firm BB Energy. BOST had earlier stated at a press conference the discount was necessary to enable BB Energy defray costs, including insurance and shipment charges. Addressing a counter press conference at Tema, Executive Secretary of COPEC, Duncan Amoah, described the justification as lacking substance, as he alleged the product has since the end of trade remained in tank at all. He also accused BOST of conveniently commenting on the trade with BB Energy, which involved 942,000 barrels, while ignoring other sales which formed part of the 2 million barrels under contention.
If BOST should go to Rotterdam, BOST can buy FOB aboard a vessel. BOST cannot be able to buy in-tank crude in Rotterdam and process or refine same in Rotterdam and sell same in Rotterdam when it's not licensed by the Rotterdam authorities. In Russia, same. The United States would not allow. Even Nigeria would not allow you to just go buy crude domiciled in tank, not aboard a vessel on their waters that you need to move to a destination. Domiciled in tank. Indeed, it was fascinating when you listen to the famous Kweku Baako on Saturday on Newsfile, categorically states that per his checks, BB Energy was applying to the NPA as of December. It bought the product in September. October, November, December, it was then applying for authorization by the NPA to be able to manage the crude. Yet, for BOST, BB Energy needs no license. This license that they even applied to the NPA, according to the records of Uncle Kweku Baako, had been declined. So, when we raise issues of illegality, we are not taking them lightly, and we do not think that BOST coming out to insult our intelligence, that BB does not need a license to buy crude domiciled in tank, not aboard the vessel. Domiciled in tank. It's not even an X-tank transaction where the crude is being pumped out to be sold. The crude is sitting at all. You sell the crude at all, and you call it FOB because Ghanaians do not understand FOB. I'm sorry, but BOST would need to come again. Or they have tried the gymnastics. Does it mean BOST should have local license from all this? That's what they ask. BOST indeed can buy from around the world, but none of the countries mentioned will engage BOST in an in-tank transaction that allows them to hold stock in or refine or process and sell same at same destination without the appropriate licenses to obtain.
And in another development, Duncan Amoah has declared his outfit's official intention of petitioning the Special Prosecutor to investigate the issues surrounding the crude oil sale by BOST.
We are interested in how much the state could have made, how much has been thrown away, and who caused all of that, what the motivation could have been. Is it that they are friends for which they needed to just transact and make money? Is it that somebody needs to make money for which we have to sell Ghana's crude, 10 oil fields crude, at a Donkomi price? Those are questions we are further asking. BOST has sought to say that our accusations or our issues were baseless. Of all the issues we raised, one about the sale, they haven't denied it. They only contest the numbers and say that it's not 1.8, it's 942,000. We are saying that our records point to 1.8 million barrels at all. Boss has suggested it traded off some of the barrels with AOT. That transaction, we are also interested. At what rate did they sell to AOT? Was it the same Donkomi value? Or for that transaction, Ghana realized market value for that transaction? We are also saying that there was some illegality occasioned, and it thus came as no surprise when Mr. Abdul Malik Kwekubakun pointed out that his documents could confirm that BB Energy was applying to NPA in December. Check the dates. It bought the crude in September, October, November. In December, it was asking for permits. The permits that boss says BB Energy doesn't need, BB was applying to get it from NPA, and it has been declined.
Very interesting developments there in the downstream petroleum sector. But let's go on the phone lines and touch base with the principal researcher of the Institute of Energy Security, Richmond Roxon, who has been following this particular development with keen interest. Richmond, you're welcome to the marketplace. Now,
thank you very much.
One of the most important, highlights is the fact that, BOSS contended that BB Energy did not require a license before it operated in the shores of the country. Now, COPEC is saying otherwise. Now, what do you have to say about this?
Good afternoon to you, and good afternoon to your cherished viewers. This issue is becoming murkier by the day, and for us, we find it quite strange that we haven't had any communication from the ministry responsible for energy. I think it's important that the ministry steps in to be able to settle these issues, especially when we have BOSS involved. BOSS is a state-owned institute. At the end of the day, whatever they do, their reputation will come back to haunt the business. So the trading of accusations and the counter accusations, we don't think that it will augur well. Last week I mentioned that the claim by BOSS that BB Energy didn't need license to trade, especially when they were refining the crude into finished product, could not be accurate, because definitely they would need some form of license from the NPA. And if you remember, I mentioned also that it would have been important for NPA to write, for BOSS to write to NPA to ask NPA whether or not they can go ahead to do business with this company. But there are also procurement issues that was raised by COPEC, aside the pricing issues, and we are calling on the ministry once again. It's important that the ministry intervene so that we can have an end to the current impasse between COPEC and BOSS.
Now, COPEC is also contending that the issue that crude has moved out and therefore required or could require a discount is unfounded. What's your take on that also?
It's a very strange position by BOSS. Every crude or every petroleum product comes with a quality test certificate. So when crude is imported or when you buy crude, definitely you know the quality, you know the water level and all. And that if BOSS, in its opinion, feels like within the period there was some form of contamination which ordinarily reduced the quality of the crude, it's important that they publish the quality test that they did, which company did the quality test, and what were the results. Until then, that position is not tenable, that because the crude was stored for 10 months, it means it was contaminated or was of less quality. The crude can be stored for so many years. These are some of the challenges that we've had with some of the accusations ongoing, and the ministry establishing the committee to look into it should be able to settle all these issues.
Now, the National Petroleum Authority, NPA, as a regulator, has not officially come out to address this situation. Do you suspect any untoward action on the part of the NPA?
Yes, if you're talking about licenses, it's important the NPA comes out to clarify. And for me, NPA BOSS they are institutions under the mother body, which is the Ministry for Energy. So if the ministry should take interest in it, the result or the questions that need to be answered will be answered by the state institutions that are involved. So the bigger picture is that, yes, the NPA has spoken about it. It's quite strange. the refinery, that's the oil refinery, hasn't also spoken about it, especially when they've also been mentioned that they stored the crude. COPEC also mentioned tolling fees as well, that the refinery charged around 3.5 instead of the regular 5.5, and Bost's own challenges with dealing with the company and how much discount he even give. These issues need to be settled, and the ministry will do itself some good if it takes time to look into these issues and come out with a report.
All right, many thanks for your time. Richmond Roxon is the principal researcher of the Institute of Energy Security. He's been adding his voice to the impasse between BOST and COPEC. And on that note, we draw the curtain down on this afternoon's edition of The Marketplace. Many thanks for your company. My name is Emmanuel Apwaji Wiafi. Have a good afternoon.